Hey, this is John. Welcome back to Modern Old School Developer. In the last videos, we were setting up an endpoint on our API to import our movies. So we now have movies in our database that we could use. So rather than displaying this dummy data, let's display the actual movies in our database. So we're going to need to change this from using the dummy state. We'll need to make an endpoint that allows us to get the movies, and we'll need to actually use that endpoint to fetch the list. So let's work on those things. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into initialState.ts, and we're going to delete this list of movies. We're going to use our real list from now on. There we go. We have no more state. So if I go back here and I hit refresh, you can see no more movies. All right, that's a good start. Now let's work on making an endpoint. So first we're going to go into the schemas.py file. I want to make a schema for the return. So we've got this movie base. We're going to base it on that. So I'm going to say it is the movie file, and it's going to derive from movie base. So what I want to return is just the list of movies with their file names and their IDs. Nothing else is going to go in that movie list display. So it's effectively already done, and we could have just returned movie base, but I don't like doing that. I don't like having base in the name of a return type. It's semantic, but I don't like it, so we're going to call it movie file. All right, so over here, we need to make a new endpoint. This is our main.python file in our backend. So we've got our post movies. Let's make an endpoint that is get movies. So app.get. The endpoint is going to be /movies, and the response model is going to be a list of schemas.movie file. So we'll return a list of movie files. All right, so we need to make a function. This can be get movies. Again, doesn't matter what you call it. The decorator is what's important. It tells us what to return. And now I need to return the movies. So we're going to need to do a CRUD application. That's the read part. So we'll do crud.getMovies. Or maybe we'll say get all movies. All right. So we don't have that function defined yet. So let's go ahead and start working on that. So let's go ahead into our CRUD file. We've got add movie. That's all that's here so far. So let's define get all movies. And that is going to return a list of models.movie. So let's return that. So it is a list of models.movie. So to work with our database, we're going to need a database session. So we'll say DB is a session type. So what are we going to do? Well, it's actually pretty simple. So we are going to return, and we're going to do a database, not rollback. We're going to do a database query. And we want a database query for models.movie. We are querying the movies table. So we need to get the movie table model. And then we are going to say we're going to do a join on this table. We are going to do an outer join on the studio table. And we're going to do another outer join on the series table. So what this is doing is it's using those foreign keys to get us the studio information and the series information for our movies. We are going to order by, and what we're going to order by is models.movie.processed. So like I said, when we first made our schema, I want the movies that have not been processed to appear at the top. And since Boolean values will be false before true, this will let us make that order. Then I want to do models.studio.name, and this is why we needed to do the join, because otherwise we could not order by the studio name and the series name, because we would not have those properties on our SQL query. Now we want to do models.series.name. and finally models.movie.name. So we're going to display things in studio order, then series order, then name order. And we're going to have the movies that have not been processed appear at the top of the list. So this is our ordering clause. And finally, we simply do an all at the end because we want everything that we find in here. We want everything. So that should get us all of our movies. So back into main.py, all we have to do here is actually return the all movies. This is part of the integration with FastAPI and SQL Alchemy. We have this schemas.movie file, and that schemas movie file is based on the movie base. Actually, we need to add one thing here. We do need to say class config ORM mode equals true. Otherwise, it will not be able to process things properly. So there's a difference in getting dictionary properties versus getting object properties in Python. So because of the way you access that, you have to use this ORM mode to get it with the object property, I think. It might be the other way around, but one of those two things is important. So we need to have the ORM mode be true for that to work. Okay, so I believe that is all we're going to need to do to make this work. No, one more thing. Over on our main, we need to pass it the database, which we don't have yet. So we're going to need to add our database session. It's going to be the exact same thing that we did for our post request. So we need to get a database session, which depends on the get database dependency injection. Okay, I believe that should be all good. Let's go check things here. Okay, our backend did crash. That's fine. Let's just reload that. Python often crashes when you do these reload things because it doesn't have a type thing right, and it just won't handle that well. JavaScript is more forgiving, so usually your JavaScript thing will run indefinitely and just go again. But Python, you need to check UVcorn from time to time when you're working on this to make sure it hasn't crashed when you're working on something. But it looks like it ought to be good now, so let's see if we're able to make this query. So if we go over here, and let's just go into our API. So we'll go localhost port 8000 /docs. There we go. We've got our new endpoint, get movies. All right, so if we get the movies, what happens? Let's try it out. Let's do the execute. And we got a response body of nothing. That is expected because I did delete all the movies before I started this video. So let's start off by going into our movie manager, going into admin, and doing import movies. And you can see it says we imported 7 movie files. So it should be 7 movies in there now. You can tell, and if I do it again, it will say no movies are available for import. So I did change a little bit of things between the last video and clean this up a little bit. All right, so let's try that again. When I execute this, hey, there we go. We are returning this, a list of movie files. We've got IDs, we've got file names. Perfect, that's just what we want. So let's see if we can integrate that into our front end now. So we've got nothing here. We want to actually be able to call that get movies and then put that into our state. So let's see how we can make that happen. So over in our movie list component, we need to do something to load the movies. So we need to do that when we first load the page. So we're going to put that into our global application state like we had it before, but rather than just, having these here, we need to actually define it. So let's go and open our reducer. So we need to make a function for that. We're going to need to open not our state content, we need to open up our state types. So if we go look in here, you can see that originally our movies were an array of strings. this is no longer the case. It's not an array of strings. It is an array of objects which have an ID property and a file name property. So let's go ahead and add a new type called a movie type. So let's see here. We're going to export interface movie type. Actually, movie file type. So the movie file type has an ID, which is a number, and it has a file name, which is a string. So there is our movie file type. So our movie, rather than being an array of strings, is going to be an array of movie file types. So now we have the proper types to be able to do this. So now let's go into our reducer. We want to be able to set our state after we get the list of movies. So we need to make another action type, and we'll say set movie list. Maybe just set movies? Yeah, set movies. So we will set movies, and then we need a new action, which is going to be set movies action. So export interface set movies action. And the type is going to be actions.setMovies. And the payload is going to be an array of movie file types. So there we go. We now have our set movies action. So if we go into our reducer, we can say case actions.setMovies. And we're going to return a new state. It's going to be a spread of the old state, and our movies is now going to be replaced by our new movies, which is in our action.payload. Why does it not like that? We haven't added this action to our type. We need to add this as well. So it needs to be or set movie action. There we go, set movies action. Okay, now it should be good. Okay, now Typescript is happy. Cool. All right, so now we have returned our new state. Did I call that movies? I did. Okay, so that should be all good. So now we have a way to dispatch and update our state when we get new movies in there. So on the movie list, we need to be able to actually do that. So we also need to import the dispatch, because if we don't have that, we can't dispatch our actions. And we're going to use the use effect hook to be able to do this when we load our movie list component. So we're going to say use effect. Let's just delete that. And we are dependent on nothing. We want to run this just when we go up here. And we will go ahead and import use effect. So we're going to have an arrow function on use effect. That's what's going to actually run. And inside that, we're going to have another function, function that is invoked immediately. This is called an immediately invoked function execution, I think. IFE, IIFE. And we're doing that because we can't make the function past use effect async, but I can do that in here if I run this. So we can say async, we can say async function, and we can just run that. So we're going to get whatever's in here and run this async function. So what we need to do is we need to make a fetch request to our endpoint to get those movies. So just like we did in our action form, so just like we did in our admin import movies, and I refactored the admin page to use components now. So we've got this admin import movies component. This is just for that one button thing. So you can see we're doing basically this stuff. So why don't we just copy this and go edit that? So we'll go in here, and that's what we're going to put in here. So we're going to be awaiting the fetch of movies. It's not going to be a post request, and I don't think we need the headers either. In fact, we probably didn't need them last time either, because we didn't have a body. So I think it's okay just like this. This will do a GET request by default. All right, so we're going to get our movies. We're going to get the movie data. There are no other codes other than the OK code, so there's not any point in doing this right now. All we need to do is actually set our thing. So that means we need to dispatch, and we need to make a dispatch action. The type is going to be actions.setMovies, and the payload is going to be data. All right, I believe that is everything we'll need to do to actually get our movie list. We do need to know one more thing, though. We need to display something while we're loading the movies, because if it's not there, it would be nice if it just displayed nothing instead of this select thing. So let's see what we can do about that. Actually, let's go ahead and see what it did already. Did it work? Okay, if I hit refresh, what do I get? I get an error. Okay, there's nothing wrong with our use effect hook. The problem is when we try to go over this. We don't have the right thing here. We can't just display an object here. This is not correct anymore. It used to be, an array of string. That's not what this is anymore. So let's go ahead and uncomment this. And we're going to state.movies.map. We don't need the index anymore because we're going to have an identifier. So our option key is going to be movie.id. Our value is going to be movie.id. And this is going to be movie file name. And once we do that, hey, looky there, we've got our new list. And it's all alphabetized, so hooray. Okay, so that is displaying our form. I did want a loading state just in case, we have a lot of things to load or it takes a while or something. So why don't we do that real quick to see what that would look like. So we're going to have a use state in here. It's going to say loading set loading equals use state, and that's going to be set to true by default. So once we get this, we will set loading to be false. Actually, I better wait till I actually update the state. Okay, so now we are no longer loading. So we need to use this loading state to display something different in the beginning. So basically, if we are loading, I don't want to display this select at all. So let's say loading, and if that's true, we're going to say loading. Otherwise, we display this select. So we can move that over there, and that should work for our loading state. Now, it may be too fast to see this. Yeah, you could barely see that. Let's put a slight delay in there so you can see that it actually is working. All right, so let's make a delay timer so we can see the loading state a little bit. So I think we do something like await new promise resolve set timeout to resolve, and then we need to say, I don't know, 4 seconds, which is 4,000 milliseconds. So let's see if we can do that. So if I go over to our movie manager and hit refresh, it is fake loading. And there we go. After 4 seconds, actually, it does that. So if we had a slow connection, it would actually wait to return this, and then we'd have this. So we may want to keep that height property on the H2 tag, but other than that, I think it actually looks pretty good. So yeah, well, there we go. That is actually pulling data from our API and actually displaying it in our movie list. Had to get rid of that delay, obviously, but yeah, let's just do that. And I don't know if you're seeing that, but that is one of the downsides with using the global state. When we unmount this component, we don't have that query cached. So it is reloading this from the database every time we flip it back and forth. That's something that we will eventually fix by using React Toolkit Query. But for today, I think that's a good wrapping up point. I hope you've learned something about making more APIs and doing more requests and use effect hooks and all kinds of cool stuff here. We're one step closer to making our movie manager. So thanks for watching this video. If you made it all the way here, give it a thumbs up. subscribe to the channel, help us grow, and I will see you next time.